believe me, I can understand what it's like, especially in these stressful times, to have trouble sleeping. Maybe you're tossing and turning and you're trying to get yourself to sleep. And I'm sure you're looking for ways on how you can do that, how you can relax and get a good night's sleep. Well, let me tell you, if you're having trouble sleeping, the Deep Sleep Sounds podcast sounds like the show just for you. It's a podcast that uses quality binaural sounds to help you calm your mind and drift off to sleep. Whether it's rainstorms, calming birds, wind chimes, soothing music that you can sleep to, calming white noise. This podcast, the Deep Sleep Sounds podcast, aspires to help you sleep and relax and unwind. Listen to these soothing sounds designed to help you de-stress and get the rest you've been looking for by checking out the Deep Sleep Sounds podcast on Spotify or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Welcome to The Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Saturday, June the 20th, 2020. There are many names I have for him. Captain Cover-Up, Prince of Darkness. I could go on and on. But he is an odious figure in government, in the federal government. Who am I talking about? I think you already know. I'll be talking about him in this episode of The Politicrat. Next. Welcome back. You'll know exactly who this episode is about, certainly in the next 2 minutes.
Tonight, Attorney General Bill Barr is igniting fresh controversy with comments that some see as a threat to communities of color. Here's Jeff Begays.
The Attorney General was at a ceremony honoring the work of law enforcement at the Justice Department when he said this about the communities they serve.
They have to start showing more than they do, the respect and support that law enforcement deserves. And if communities don't give that support and respect, they may find themselves without the police protection they need.
Critics like activist DeRay McKesson called those comments a threat aimed at communities of color.
So Barr was using code and language to highlight black and brown communities as the communities that are, quote, critical of police.
Get out the car right now.
Fatal shootings and excessive force by the police, much of it caught on cell phone and body cameras, have prompted widespread protests. And ever since Michael Brown was shot and killed by a police officer in Ferguson in 2014, departments across the country have tried to improve police-community relations. While the Obama administration pushed for reform of local police forces to curb any potential misconduct, the Trump administration has taken a different approach, one critics argue that favors the police.
This administration has your back.
Benita Gupta served in the Justice Department under President Obama.
It is wholly irresponsible for the nation's chief law enforcement officer to criticize people who are seeking a better, more fair system as being anti-police.
Jeff Begays joins us. So is the Department of Justice walking back any of these comments by the Attorney General?
No, the AG is standing by those comments. We reached out to DOJ to see if they wanted to clarify. They didn't. Now, I did talk to law enforcement sources, and while they weren't comfortable with Barr's language, they did acknowledge that this is a tough environment for police departments across the country right now. In fact, they're all having a hard time recruiting.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
That was from the CBS Evening News from December 4th, 2019. Almost 6 months ago. In fact, almost, 7 months ago. If I have my math correct. That was the report, and it's about Attorney General Bill Barr, who, in my opinion, should be impeached because he has obstructed justice. He has been an enabler to the criminality of Donald Trump, and in fact, I think he's participated in it. Seth Abramson, who has written several books about government and has a new book coming soon, has been talking about this and about Barr having a key role in perhaps even shepherding dictators to send in their payments for Donald Trump's 2020 election campaign. That's just one thing to think about. Turkey may be involved, Erdogan, the dictator there, and others. Bill Barr's comments last December, and those comments that you heard from, I believe it was August of 2019 and from March of that year as well, that you heard in that CBS report that I played, are certainly not something that black people and brown people in particular will feel comfortable or confident about. We are not going to be confident or comfortable with Bill Barr. And clearly he has shown and given us every reason not to be comfortable with him. Give law enforcement respect. Well, you have to earn respect. And law enforcement, at the moment, over the last few years, decades, and centuries, have not done nearly enough in general to earn our respect. Those comments were from just 6 or 7 months ago. That report was. And so those words really resonate deeply now, especially with the lynching of Rayshard Brooks a week ago and 1 day ago, a week and a day ago. The assassination, the murder, the lynching of George Floyd, the torture of George Floyd, the assassination, the lynching, the murder of Breonna Taylor. And firing one cop, by the way, is not enough. All 3 of those cops in Louisville, Kentucky, who killed Breonna Taylor must be fired and arrested, all 3 of them. Bill Barr, though, is the enabler of criminality. And he has, for a number of years now, hung around as the operative of the Republican Party, the one that does all the dirty work behind the scenes and sometimes right in front of the scenes. Bill Barr has been in the Republican sphere for over 40 years now. And he, in fact, I'd say almost 50 years. He was in the CIA. He worked in the Ronald Reagan White House. In the 70s, he was in the CIA. In the 80s, he worked in the Ronald Reagan White House. He was an attorney general twice. Once in George H.W. or Poppy Bush administration. And, of course, presently in the Trump administration. And he covered up the Reagan-Iran-Contra criminality I wouldn't call it a scandal. I would call it criminality, because that's exactly what it was. And he covered up George H.W. Bush's involvement in that and the knowledge of it as well. Caspar Weinberger, George P. Schultz, and all of those people involved in Iran-Contra who hung around and stuck around, those guys really got off pretty light. I mean, I think Caspar Weinberger spent some time in prison or was sentenced or served some time or was indicted, whatever it might have been. And the whole thing with the H.W. Bush administration was Bill Barr, as the Attorney General in it, basically undermined the position of Lawrence Walsh. Lawrence Walsh was the special prosecutor who had been enlisted to investigate George H.W. Bush and especially the surrounding players in his administration and in the criminality involving the scandals with Iran-Contra and other things that Bush had reason to know about. And in an extraordinary statement, and this really was, for a special prosecutor, one of the most extraordinary statements. Because what happened was that Lawrence Walsh, who spent a lot of time, being a special prosecutor, he was named the independent counsel. This guy, it's just incredible, extraordinary statement to make. But he did this after he was enlisted as the independent counsel. He had, and in this investigation, it was just remarkable. There was a re-indictment of Caspar Weinberger. And that's what Walsh had done. And just as there is this individual one situation, an individual one, and I'll get to that in a few moments, connects to, of course, Donald Trump, the unindicted co-conspirator with Michael Cohen. And like I said, I'll deal with that in a few moments. In 1992, there was an indictment, that re-indictment of Caspar Weinberger, and Caspar Weinberger was prominent in the administration of Reagan and Bush. I mean, he was the former Secretary of Defense, Caspar Weinberger, in the Bush administration. Or certainly, in the Reagan administration. Getting my administrations twisted here. But Caspar Weinberger was prominently involved. And George W. Bush's name, George H.W. Poppy Bush's name was mentioned in this indictment. And what happened is that Walsh had been sidelined. He had absolutely been sidelined. And this indictment was dismissed. And George H.W. Bush pardoned Caspar Weinberger late in December 1992. And what happened is that Lawrence Walsh had made a remarkable statement saying that this was a complete cover-up. He made that statement literally around Christmas time in 1992. And that his efforts to see the case through against George H.W. Bush as well as Caspar Weinberger was completely stalled. And he said that this was a cover-up and that there were people in the administration, I think he may have even named Bill Barr, as someone who literally blocked and undermined the special prosecutor, which for all intents and purposes is obstruction of justice. It was extraordinary. And this statement that Lawrence Walsh, the special prosecutor, made was made literally around Christmas time of 1992. Or thereabouts. Bill Clinton at that time had been elected as the president of the United States. Now, he still was yet to step into office. It wouldn't be, of course, until January the 20th of the following year, 1993, that he would be inaugurated and take office. And of course, you know what happened. Literally a month after that, there was the bombing of the World Trade Center in February of 1993. Many people have forgotten that now. September 11th, 2001 was not the first time that the World Trade Center had been bombed. The World Trade Center had first been bombed in February of 1993. Might have been around February 20th or so of that year. And 7 people were killed, to the best of my memory. Feels like that was just yesterday, but it was 1993. Almost 30 years ago. Which is incredible when you think about history and how time flies. But my whole point is that the special prosecutor into these affairs around Iran-Contra, Lawrence Walsh, had been completely eviscerated and had his role marginalized by the Attorney General, Bill Barr, who was, as I said, the Attorney General for George H.W. Bush at the time. And Lawrence Walsh released this extraordinary statement and said that it was a cover-up, that he was absolutely being thwarted, and there was a cover-up. He even went so far as to write a book about this. It was called Firewall, the Iran-Contra Conspiracy and Cover-Up. Walsh had passed away in 2014. He was 102 years old, 102. But it was Bill Barr, the Prince of Darkness, Captain Cover-Up, who completely thwarted the process of justice. He obstructed justice as the Attorney General. Nothing happened to Bill Barr. He continued on his merry little way. And he ping-ponged between corporate entities after his time as the AG in Poppy Bush's administration. And one of the things about Bill Barr is that this was not his first rodeo at covering up things because, of course, as you know, Bill Barr had been able to persuade Poppy Bush to pardon six people who were involved in Iran-Contra. And that's what George H.W. Bush did. And that was Barr recommending that. Bill Barr has been Captain Cover-Up for a long time. Where there's been criminality over the last 40 years or so, there has been Bill Barr cleaning up the mess, putting lipstick on a pig, polishing a turd. That has been Captain Cover-Up, Bill Barr. This is a guy who, as I indicated earlier with that audio clip, is someone who relishes attacking black people. And he does it through this law enforcement and law and order lens. This is the same guy who just a few weeks ago said he didn't believe that there was any systemic racism in policing. But yeah, there's racism in the United States of America. Like we have to look at Bill Barr, a white guy, for an opinion on whether racism exists or not in any systemic form. He authored a report in 1992, in the same year as he did this cover-up for Poppy Bush, he authored a report about the case for more incarceration. This is a guy who absolutely believed in putting more people in jail, read more black and brown people and native people in jail. Bill Barr has been anti-black for a long time. He's been anti-brown people, anti the poor. He has been anti-anybody who is not rich or criminal in the sense of white-collar criminals who are the grand theft auto criminals of the lot. These are the people who are looting billions of dollars from taxpayers. But somehow that doesn't get the kind of attention or the gloss or the prolonged spotlight that petty criminality does. Bill Barr has been a significant cover-up artist. And he has done his job with relish. This is a guy who just last year had gone to court to try to completely eviscerate Obamacare. This is a guy who reinstated the death penalty for federal crimes. This is a guy who just last year, on several occasions, was held in criminal contempt of Congress. The House of Representatives, the Democratic-led House, held him in contempt of Congress at least twice last year, in 2019, for completely ignoring and defying subpoenas for him to testify. Particularly in the situation with the Ukraine and, of course, Trump's phone calls that were, of course, an abuse of power. But the Republican Senate decided, nah, we're too afraid to convict Donald Trump on these affairs that were obviously so blatantly criminal and impeachable and removable. Of course, we know that Donald Trump was impeached last year, but the Republican Senate just didn't cut the mustard. They were cowards. Bill Barr also last year, I might remind you, I have you know, did something very sneaky and duplicitous and infuriating. He issued a 4-page letter in March of last year, and a full 3 weeks before the Mueller report was released, in that 4-page letter said, well, you know, this report clears Donald Trump of any wrongdoing. This Mueller report clears Trump. And he gave this 4-page or 4-paragraph summary saying that, preempting the report. The report was not released for another 2 or 3 weeks. So for 2 or 3 weeks, in the whole public eye in the United States, was this notion that the Mueller report cleared Donald Trump. And the report clearly did not clear Donald Trump. And the two words that were being used were no corruption, no collusion. No obstruction, no collusion. And that was the thing that Trump repeated. Then you read the report, which is all of 400 plus pages. And you realize that the report does not clear Donald Trump of anything. In fact, you heard it from Robert Mueller's mouth himself. And when I come back, I will play to you what Robert Mueller had to say about his report. Welcome back. Okay, Bill Barr is somebody who has been a quicker picker. Bill Barr is someone who has been a quicker picker. I can't get this out. It's not funny. This is really serious stuff. Bill Barr has been something of a quicker picker upper. You remember that phrase from one of those cleaning commercials. I think it was Bounty. Not trying to plug you Bounty towels, but that was one of their catchphrases. It may still be the quicker picker upper. That is who Bill Barr has been throughout his career as an attorney general. And for the second time, he has been the attorney general, this time in the Trump administration. He is engaging in exactly what he's always been engaging in, which is cover-up, which is deception, which is obfuscate. I am having trouble speaking in this episode. Obfuscation. I can't even say that word. And I know what it means. Smoke and mirrors. Cloudying the waters. Muddying the waters. Obfuscation. And that is what Bill Barr does. And he does this all the time to special counsel. Lawrence Walsh in the 90s, or actually really started in 1986, Lawrence Walsh was special counsel to the investigations investigating Iran-Contra. That's what he was. And as I told you, in 1992, late in that year, Lawrence Walsh declared that this was a cover-up. And the fact that Walsh had been obstructed and blocked and all these kinds of things, and these guys had been pardoned, was designed to eviscerate Lawrence Walsh. And it was Bill Barr who told George H.W. Bush, a.k.a. Poppy Bush, to pardon each of these people, including Caspar Weinberger, for his illegalities. He had been re-indicted. And Barr literally chopped Walsh off at the knees. Walsh was the independent counsel, special prosecutor. He was investigating all of this. The independent counsel. And now, in 2019 at least, Robert Mueller, special counsel, to investigate what was going on with Russia and Trump's dealings with Russia and the 2016 presidential election. Robert Mueller was cut off at the knees initially in April of last year, March of last year, by Bill Barr. Hello, hey presto. Bill Barr, as I said, in March of 2019, the exact date, March 24th, it was a Sunday, 2019. Bill Barr came out with this statement that the Mueller report would not yet be released, but I'm going to just release you a summary of the report. And that summary says that there was no obstruction or collusion as far as the Russians were concerned and Trump dealing with them. No collusion with them as far as 2016's election was concerned, and no obstruction. Now, we know that from reading the report, that is not true. We know that. And by the way, behind the scenes, Robert Mueller was furious with Bill Barr. Absolutely furious. Robert Mueller had been the FBI director for a number of years. In fact, he was the FBI director under George W. Bush, that's George Bush II. And he was also FBI director in Obama's administration for a few years. He was asked to stay on. Well, he has a 10-year term. FBI directors typically have a 10-year term, so they are able to serve through administrations. Robert Mueller was the FBI director during 9/11, actually, or just around that time. So in 2001, he had been in George W. Bush's administration. And he served also into Obama's administration and finished out his 10-year term. Robert Mueller was the special counsel starting in 2017, and it was around October of that year that Robert Mueller had got his first indictments. And I don't exactly remember exactly who it was he had indicted, but there were so many people that were indicted during this whole investigation by Robert Mueller of Trump and any associates of his in connection with Russia and the 2016 United States presidential election. There were so many people indicted, at least 24, if not more, during the course of the time that Mueller had been doing this investigation as the Justice Department special counsel. I think he started in May of 2017. His first indictments came in October of 2017. And this investigation lasted 22 months, so that by the time he got to March of 2019, his investigation had finished. And the report was supposed to come out, but it got delayed. Bill Barr delayed it. But not before he would make this press conference announcement on March the 24th of 2019, declaring, no obstruction or collusion here by Trump with the Russians regarding the election of 2016. Nothing to see here. And then for the next week and a half, Bill Barr and company proceeded to look through the report and redact it. We still, to this day, have not seen the full Mueller report, nor has Congress, for that matter, much less the general public in this country. We still have not seen the unredacted Mueller report. And it is not known if we ever will. It's not clear that we ever will. This is what Robert Mueller had to say in late May of 2019, about 5 or 6 weeks after the report had finally been made public with all of the redactions in it. Here's what Robert Mueller had to say.
And as set forth in the report after that investigation, if we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so.
And I'll play it one more time for you. This is Robert Mueller right at the end of May of 2019. Because I think you really need to hear this again. There's no question that Robert Mueller was not happy. It was a really short press conference that Robert Mueller, in fact, it wasn't even really a press conference. It was just Robert Mueller coming out, making a brief statement. It was literally about 3 or 4 minutes long, if that. And then he walked away, didn't take any questions. Again, this was the special counsel to the Justice Department. It was Robert Mueller here. And this was last year, May 30th of last year, 2019. It was right near the end of May. Anyway, here he is once again. And he's talking about his own report and where Donald Trump sits in relation to it, contrary to what Bill Barr had been saying a few weeks before.
And as set forth in the report after that investigation, if we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so.
If we had had confidence that the president did not commit a crime, we would have said so. In other words, he committed a crime. Oh dear. And that was that. The House of Representatives did not bother pursuing anything out of Russia. They decided to wait until the other shoe dropped, and it did drop with Ukraine, of course, in July, just literally 2 months after Robert Mueller's statement. Donald Trump continued his criminality. And of course, he made that phone call, I think it was July the 24th or 25th of 2019. Literally, we're just barely, we're just under a year ago. Just under a year ago now. We're coming up on the 1 year mark of that. And there was criminality again. Hey, presto, criminality. And of course, the Congress finally got on it after months and months and months of the American public begging Speaker Pelosi to impeach this guy. Begging. He had committed an impeachable offense literally on day one. The second he was sworn in, he had committed an impeachable offense. And you had all of these Republicans saying, oh, they just wanted to impeach him from the start. It's not that we wanted to impeach Donald Trump from the start. It is literally that from as soon as he said, I do, or I will, or in his case, I won't protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. From that very moment that he finished saying his oath, he had officially violated several clauses already. He didn't divest money. He was getting foreign money at his properties. And Donald Trump had committed impeachable offenses. The emoluments clause. So it's not that people were calling for his impeachment. It was we were pointing out that he had committed impeachable offenses. And, of course, his daughter Ivanka, her made in China wear. And you had a government official violating the Hatch Act. That was none other than Kellyanne Conway, who went on Fox News, or I believe it was Fox News, and peddled Ivanka Trump's products. And there was an independent counsel that said, I think it was an independent committee, oh, she didn't violate anything. She didn't violate the Hatch Act. Well, actually, she did. You're not supposed to, as a government official, recommend that in your capacity as a government official, and she was being interviewed in her capacity, recommend that you buy or that you sell or advertise somebody's products in your government official capacity. That's not allowed. But back to Bill Barr. Bill Barr tried to undercut the release of the Mueller report last year. He preempted it. He tried to undercut it, and he tried to dampen its significance by announcing in March of 2019 that the report did not find any collusion or obstruction. And we know that that's not true. That's a complete lie. But that lie lingered in the air in the American public for almost a month before we got to see the report. And when the report came out, and literally only one or two people read the report in government, or at least in the Senate or the House, one of them was Elizabeth Warren. The darn report was replete with stuff that Donald Trump had done that was not above board at all and was absolutely collusion and absolutely obstruction. So much so that during the course of the investigation, Donald Trump wanted to fire Mueller. I don't know how many of you remember that. It was in 2018 that Donald Trump wanted to fire Robert Mueller. And there were officials in the White House at the time who persuaded Donald Trump not to do that. But the point I'm trying to make over all of this is Bill Barr's dirty hands were all over this. And it was obstruction. It was essentially an obstruction of Robert Mueller's report. Muddying the waters, poisoning the well, sowing the seeds of doubt in the public, trying to lessen the impact of this important report. That was definitely not an absolving of Donald Trump. Bill Barr has long been somebody who has shilled and kissed the backside of his Republican president that he was serving for as Attorney General. And he actually has believed in the Republican notion of unitary This is what they say, unitary executive theory. I mean, this is something that is very dangerous. This is shorthand for dictatorship. They believe that absolute power, under this theory of the unitary executive, absolute power is supposed to be, in their minds, vested in the president, in the executive branch. And we know the Constitution does not allow for that. What you have in the United States Constitution is 3 co-equal branches of government. The legislative branch, Congress. The executive branch, the White House. And the judicial branch, the Supreme Court. But what Bill Barr and other Republicans have propounded throughout the years is this notion of the unitary executive theory. And this theory, in quotes, was again propounded in the W. Bush administration. W for war criminal. And Dick Cheney, war criminal extraordinaire, was one of the people propounding it, as was David Addington, Dick Cheney's lawyer. And he rebirthed that. And people like John Yoo and all these people. John Yoo had written this torture memo. John Yoo was the one who wrote this whole memo about torturing and justifying it and waterboarding, and it was perfectly okay and it was legal. This was around the time in 2003 with Abu Ghraib. Hopefully you remember Abu Ghraib in Iraq. During the invasion of that country by the United States, there was torture going on, waterboarding, and of course the atrocities that happened in Abu Ghraib and other places. And you had United States military personnel under the orders of their commander doing all of these unholy things these were just violations. Well, not just, they were out and out violations of human rights of Iraqis who were held prisoner and subjected to so much torture in so many different ways. And pretty much all of these folks in the hierarchy of power got away with it, all of them. And it was only the military personnel who followed their orders who didn't. At least some of them didn't. There was Lindy England and there were all these other people. That was in 2003. And this unitary executive theory was something that was propounded by Bill Barr, by David Addington, Dick Cheney's attorney, and others. And now here we are in 2020 with Donald Trump, a fascist dictator. So this story did not just begin with Donald Trump, but along the way, Bill Barr was there. Like a good neighbor, Dick Barr, or I should say Bill Barr, was there. And he wasn't there as a friendly neighborhood guide. He was there to shepherd along evil and criminality. And he continued to do that this year. He continued to do that. I mean, this is a guy who this is just incredible. This is a guy who came out against his own FBI and said the FBI were investigating the whole Russia thing in bad faith. I mean, Bill Barr was trying to undermine the very agencies of government, which is what Trump had been doing and has been doing for 3+ years now. A complete devaluation and destruction of the administrative state. And he continues to do that. Disagreeing with the Inspector General report, disagreeing with the FBI, saying that they were conducting these investigations of Trump and Russia in bad faith. I mean, what is common in both of these administrations, be it the Poppy Bush administration or the Donald Trump administration, is that Bill Barr, being Attorney General in both of those, behaved more like the attorneys, the personal attorney for both George H.W. Bush and Donald Trump than he was the people's attorney, which is what the Attorney General is supposed to be. The Attorney General of this country is supposed to be the people's attorney, not the president's attorney. But that's exactly how cover-up Barr has behaved in both of these administrations. I mean, he outright called the investigation into Russia and its interference in the 2016 election as completely baseless. Those are his words, completely baseless. This is the Attorney General of this country saying an investigation by the FBI into an enemy government interfering in the United States presidential election is conducting a completely baseless investigation? More disturbingly, we've seen this year, earlier this year, Bill Barr had intervened in Roger Stone's case. And Roger Stone, of course, had committed these crimes. He has been found guilty. And earlier this year, Bill Barr stepped all over the prosecutors who had worked for years on this case. Months and years. He stepped all over them. Now, they had recommended a sentence of what? Maybe 16 years, 20 years, whatever it was, for all these crimes in sentencing. And Bill Barr overruled them and said, no, by the way, no, I recommend a much lighter sentence for Roger Stone. And that led to at least 4 of those prosecutors resigning. In disgust, they absolutely resigned. They were pissed off at Bill Barr, and they resigned. One of them, I think, was reassigned or decided to work in a different division or something. But all of them, the other 3, resigned flat out from their positions. Because their hard work and their endeavor and their asking for stronger sentences had been completely undone by cover-up Bill Barr, the Prince of Darkness. It's an extraordinary thing to have a Attorney General for the country overrule his own department's prosecutors to allow a criminal to get a lighter sentence. I mean, this is tyranny right in your face. This is criminality. This is obstruction of justice, quite frankly, in my view. And this is really incredible too. Just last month, Bill Barr, his dirty hands again on the scale. Absolutely on the scale. He announced dropping charges against Michael Flynn. Now, Michael Flynn, you know, had been the national security advisor for about all of 5 minutes. And then he was fired because of all of the things that came up about him in February of 2017. He literally was on that job for about 2 weeks, maybe 3. And he was gone. It was clear he had lied to Vice President Pence. It had been clear that he had met with Sergei Kislyak, who was a Russian envoy. He had lied about that, and that led to his ouster. But there were other things that did too. And Trump and his administration were warned during the transition period by President Obama that you should not hire Michael Flynn. He is bad news. But of course, Donald Trump ignored that warning. He put him on as his national security advisor, and hey presto, you found out within a couple of weeks that he was deep in with Kislyak and the other Russians. Flynn had to go. He had committed crimes. He had actually pled guilty in 2 different events, in 2 different charges at least. He entered guilty pleas. And extraordinarily enough, after Michael Flynn had already entered guilty pleas into the record, Bill Barr came in and said, oh, we're dropping the charges altogether. I mean, that to me is outright criminal. This guy, Bill Barr, is a gangster. And this is what he does. Now, right now, there are people in the Justice Department who are not letting this go. There's a federal judge who actually has overruled Bill Barr for the moment. I should make sure that that is clear. That Bill Barr, no, hold your horses there. We are not going to just let you do this. Hold your horses. And this federal judge has prevented Bill Barr from getting away with more murder. And the federal judge has declared that Michael Flynn will have to hold his horses too. Not so fast, Mr. Flynn. You are not in like Flynn at all. You are very much out. And the jury is very much out on you. So that has been arrested for now. The idea that Bill Barr can be a cover-up man once again. And it was so clear that Michael Flynn had committed all kinds of crimes. Colluding with a foreign entity. I mean, this stuff was really dirty stuff. There are so many people that had been indicted or served jail time or were pleading guilty like Flynn. So many others, Paul Manafort and all these other people, all indicted, serving time. Manafort, I think, is still in prison or he is out under house arrest now because of COVID-19. Something like that. I don't even remember. But I know that there were so many people in this corrupt administration who have been put in jail, indicted, sentenced, had guilty pleas, all kinds of things. And it was Michael Flynn who got an extraordinary let-off, at least had at one point, with Bill Barr doing something that is very unlike an attorney general. I mean, this is the essence of criminality. This is about completely undermining systems of government and institutions of government. I mean, that's what Bill Barr has been. He has been, for more than 40 years now, somebody who believes in destroying the administrative state, much like Steve Bannon, the racist. He believes in that same thing. I'm going to call out the FBI, just like Trump does. Just like Trump attacked the CIA the first day when he made a mockery of the CIA. When he went to Helsinki to the summit with Putin in June of 2018. I mean, that anniversary has just passed. 2 years ago, he absolutely made a mockery of United States intelligence agencies and kissed up to an enemy named dictator Vladimir Putin. And Bill Barr continues to get at this. Even just yesterday, last night, he tried to fire Jeffrey Berman, who is the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Just yesterday, just last night. Bill Barr had put out a statement late in the evening. Friday night, a classic Friday night news dump. When no one's watching, everybody's focused on Juneteenth. Everybody's focused on, oh my goodness, what's Trump's rally going to be like? Ooh, what's that going to be like in Tulsa? What do you think it's going to be like in Tulsa? Everybody was focusing on those two things. And of course, their resurgence of coronavirus, as if that ever went away. And Bill Barr probably thought, oh, well, while no one's watching late on Friday night on the East Coast, let me just slip this right past you, this 100-mile-an-hour fastball. Oh, I'm going to announce that I'm firing. Oh, no. Jeffrey Berman, the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, is stepping down. And in his place, I will be putting Jay Clayton, someone with no experience as a criminal attorney. He's never tried a criminal case. In fact, he is an SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission attorney. No matter, never mind. I'm going to put him in as the United States attorney for the Southern District of New York, doing criminal work as a lawyer who has never tried a criminal case in his life, has never sniffed a criminal law book. Maybe he did in law school, but he is an SEC attorney. Someone with an SEC background. Stocks, bonds, shareholder stuff, or, all that kind of thing. He's going to be the replacement. And within 20 minutes, Jeffrey Berman said, I'm not having this. I'm not resigning. I haven't resigned. I'm not resigning. And I'm going to be here until the Senate appoints my successor. Jeffrey Berman is the only one that has stood up to Bill Barr and to Donald Trump. And by the way, Jeffrey Berman is the U.S. attorney of the very powerful Southern District of New York, who has been in charge of the investigations into Donald Trump in New York, particularly in the SDNY, and specifically either really on Trump's associates in New York, Rudy Giuliani, and others. And any kind of story that comes out about those investigations in these next 5 months, hint, hint, read presidential election, November 3rd, are going to be things that Donald Trump is probably not going to like. So who comes in to save the day for Donald Trump? Bill Barr. There was no accident that this was announced on a Friday night late on the East Coast when nobody was really listening or paying attention. There's no accident. And there's no accident that it was done in late June, on the cusp of summer. Summer officially begins tomorrow, the 21st, Sunday. And there's no accident that this was done with just barely less than 5 months to go to the election. Donald Trump, and I almost called him Donald Crap, because I think that's what he is, quite frankly. People talk about him having a bad week. What about a bad 3.5 years? What about a bad 40 years? Or a bad 73 or 74 years? I think the media should start asking the question whether the country had a good week, not whether Donald Trump had a good week or a bad week. We've had a bad week for 3.5 years now as a country. In fact, we've had a bad week for a lot longer than 3.5 years. But Donald Trump thought that he could get away with this. Bill Barr thought that he could get away with this. But Jeffrey Berman, God bless him, said, hold your horses, Bill Barr. You're not firing me. You'll have to take me out of here. And I think it's a good strategy for Jeffrey Berman because What he has invited now, inevitably, is a court fight, a court battle that is going to be protracted. And when the appeals come, by the time all that comes along, that is going to go right through the election. And meanwhile, while the legal battle is raging in the background, Jeffrey Berman is still going to have his job as the top man in the Southern District of New York, overseeing these investigations against Donald Trump and his associates. And that's going to run right through the election. And Bill Barr doesn't want that. Bill Barr is doing Trump's work. Bill Barr is the conciliary for Donald Trump. He is Donald Trump's personal lawyer, which he should never be. Bill Barr, as I said earlier, is supposed to be the attorney for the United States of America. That's the people. That's you and me. But as I've illustrated, Bill Barr has been the personal attorney for two people in the White House. One of them is George H.W. Bush, Poppy Bush. The other is Donald J. Trump. Bill Barr will have a fight on his hands. And Bill Barr must go. The worst attorney general I can remember in the history of the United States. The worst attorney general. And there have been one or two others. Alberto Gonzales for one. Not to mention in Nixon's administration as well. Thanks for listening to this edition of The Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore.